I'm joined by the infamous, the notorious Jamey Jasta. How you doing, mate?
What up, Bees? How you doing?
I'm all right. All things considered. How has lockdown been for you before we get into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about today?
Lockdown's been all right. No complaints. I mean, a lot of people have it way worse. I'm in a decent area where people are pretty reasonable. I just go to the grocery store, I go to my office, and that's it. And no one's been stressing me. No one's been sweating me. I got my mask. I keep my mask hanging off the earplug all the time because I forget it.
Yeah.
So then if someone's pressing me to wear it, I just, if I got to go in the grocery store or the drugstore, the pharmacy, whatever, I just, boom, and I'm good. That's it, and I got no issues, just trying to just be chill. Anybody that's got bad vibes, bad energy, I just walk the other way, avoid. I'm not going to get into any conversations. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to be cool,
Yeah, it feels like a weird period, doesn't it? Obviously it feels like a weird period, but I mean, in terms of people batting off of that stuff, I'll stay off the mask chats because you don't need the blabbermouth headlines, and neither do I. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was actually building a brand and making something outside of just being a musician, because it's well known that you were involved in hardcore from the very beginning, and it was never just going to be a case of this is a music I listen to. It was living it from the get-go. What made just listening not enough? Like, you had to be on the inside, you had to be doing stuff, you had to be part of the scene. What was that drive in the early days?
Probably just because I had worked a bunch of various different odd jobs around town where I was growing up, and I just saw what people had to go through on a daily basis. I mean, it was a great learning experience. Just not only just to be with all walks of life and be in those behind the scenes situations at certain types of jobs where now I don't even know if this still happens, but back then it was like you would look out for each other. You would see how the bosses would do certain things, and then when the bosses weren't there, you try your best to just get through the day. But a lot of people, it wasn't their passion. A lot of these little jobs that I worked, they weren't, it wasn't what their first choice would be. And so early on, I just said, okay, I don't want to be a prep cook. I don't want to be a sous chef. I also did, some busboying and dishwashing, things like that. But I would see people who, had trouble with the law, and that's the only job they could get, or, were from a middle class or lower middle class area like me, and they didn't have the family member at the big Ivy League university that could get them in, even though they didn't make the grades and things like that. So yeah, I saw that a lot growing up, and just thought, I need to be in a position where I'm the boss, and that's why I started promoting shows, promoting bands, doing a label, things like that, because I could control it. And then if something went wrong, it was on me.
I know this is a massive question for the second question in, Jamey, but being a musician, not just in 2020, in recent years, one of the things that I really notice about your podcast, and something that I think we owe you a little bit of a debt for what you do on your podcast, is talking about the fact that being a musician and the checks that come in from that, it's almost like a necessity to have these other side hustles going on today. Do you think that that's a fair case? Because 95% of the musicians that I know, and I know most of them in our game, don't make enough for it to just be their job.
Yeah, it's a necessity, but if you were smart early on, and you had a good lawyer, and you didn't sign bad deals, and you had a good management firm or a good booking agent, you know, there's you can have a good career. You can have even now, I think you can have a very good under the radar career, which I think is more beneficial. Like, you know, I always felt like you look at a band like Clutch or a band like Seven Dust, and I think they also do their own label similar to how Clutch does it. They were smart. They were ahead of the curve. And now they're probably less stressed about no touring because they get the majority of the streaming revenue and whatever other royalties are coming in and syncs and things like that, which, you know, there are cases right now during this time where animated shows and video games and things like that are looking for metal songs and rock songs, and, you know, a band who owns their master is obviously going to get a larger share of that revenue. So there's cases where I look back and I go, okay, that worked at that time, and that's fine. And, you know, if you sign the deal, you sign the deal. You gotta, that's the deal you gotta live with. But now I think the gloves are off. We're in uncharted territory. I don't know if you've heard of any like labels upping their royalty rates or advancing bands' money or whatnot, but
I haven't. I'm not saying they're not doing it. I'm just saying I haven't heard.
It would be cool. It would be great to hear if that was the case, and maybe some have. That'd be awesome, especially with no touring. I mean, I think that's why a lot of bands and a lot of artists always sort of accepted lower royalties and a lower share of the profits, which is weird because the band is doing the most important thing. And in the past, it was, oh, another artist, you know, complaining about their deal or, you know, complaining about their royalties. But now that we have podcasts and now that we have the internet and we have educated people who know how other businesses work, especially in the social media space. You know, I was always inspired by social media influencers and stuff that, you know, would have a large following, and then they would, you know, simply tell a company to fuck off if they weren't going to get equity or weren't going to get, you know, a massive amount of the profits. And they were smart. All those people were smart. It's interesting that Instagram influencers and people who are on Vine or who are now on TikTok and stuff, they make a lot more than musicians because there wasn't this what I call punk rock guilt or punk rock shame. Like, how dare you make money? How dare you try to make a living off of something you work 24 hours a day at? You know, how dare you get a fair share of you know, just be happy with your 10% of
yeah,
the gross or whatever. You're like, well, I don't know. In no other business would that make sense. No one would agree to that in any other realm. So
it's what's your take? Do you think the audience are a bit more understanding of that kind of thing today? Like when I was a kid and when you were a kid, like it was like, oh my God, like fucking sick of it all, have signed to a major or whatever. Like, whereas I like to think that the majority of people today understand that if musicians don't make money, they don't always fulfill their potential. Do you know what I mean? Some bands don't get great until album 3, 4 and aren't given the chance to get there because they need to have the fucking money to survive to get there. Do you think that the audience are a bit more understanding of that sort of thing as opposed to back in the day when it was like, oh, I can't believe Against Me have signed to Warner's?
Yeah, I mean, well, I used to think about it, you know, when it came to like a band like, say, At the Gates, you know, who we played with in 1995. And I don't know what their situation with their record label at the time, or if there was other differences between the band, or if there was other issues that led them to not pursuing it. But I always thought, like, what would album 2, album 3, album 4, what would it have been like after Slaughter of the Soul if they had the proper support, if they had the proper money coming in? And this is a band from a country where I think musicians are subsidized by the government and stuff.
Yeah,
so
Refused as well. Same country.
Yeah, right. A lot of bands have gotten that support where they get the tour bus paid for, or they get the studio time paid for, or what have you. So I did think about that. But there's U.S. bands and Canadian bands and other bands too that I've thought about that. Like, what would have those records been like, or those subsequent tours been like, if they had the needed support, not just from the fans, but from the record label and whoever else is working on behalf of the band. Especially when, again, you see some of these bands that get first record pops off, it sells a lot of copies, and then they go, oh shit, we should have had a better deal. And I think the days of like a record label exposing you to an audience is over, because everybody's fighting for the same little audience. I'm not saying that the bigger record labels right now don't have great audiences, but if you're not same style as the biggest band on that label, or as that, or the biggest artist on that label, where they're bringing in the traffic, then are you really going to benefit? I think that remains to be seen, because you can be a small fish in a big pond and nobody ever looks your way, and you can be a big fish in a big pond with the other big fish, but there's 9 other fish that got albums coming out at the same time. If you were in control of your destiny, if you were in control of your marketing plan, if you were in control, you might have a say as to where that focus goes, right?
So like, I guess, do you think that, how do you view the revenue streams for what musicians get from streaming? Is it as simple as it depends on your deal? Because some of the times when my friends will like put their checks like on their social media and stuff, like it breaks my heart, man. Like and I don't begrudge Rogan the money at all, man. Like Rogan's, I think you said on a tweet once, you called him the new king of media in comparison to Howard Stern. I don't begrudge Rogan getting a cent of that money, but when that money is built upon musicians' hard work, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't begrudge any of that money to him as well, because he was one of these types of people who said, you know what, in the other lanes, I'm going to be my own boss. I may have a boss when I'm a commentator. I may have, a manager, an agent, in the comedian field, but with the podcast, he's his own boss, and he charted new territory, did it exactly how he wanted to, and now has that. I think he had fuck you money for a long time, but now he's got the ultimate fuck you money. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was an early investor in Spotify, who's also a musician who gets checks from Spotify. And actually, they made more money off of just investing in Spotify than they did off of being an artist, on Spotify. So that was interesting, and I have stocks. I don't have stock in Spotify, but I have stocks in like Sirius and other companies. And I thought, oh, that, maybe if Sirius buys up a podcast platform or signs like a Marin or signs, a big podcaster, maybe that will, be healthy competition. And I heard that they bought Stitcher, which I think is cool. And I heard that they're signing other new shows and stuff. So I'm interested to see how it just changes the space overall. Just all the companies, whether it's Apple, Google, Sirius, Spotify. I'm interested to see where it goes. And, as far as the artists getting the lion's share, I think we're a ways off from that. It is what it is. Again, we signed the deals. I mean, there's a lot of bands that were in deals that didn't even have any sort of clause in it for streaming. Like a lot of those bands that you saw that, were the holdouts. But I'm very happy with the Jasta records that I own my masters on, Lost Chapters 1 and 2. I'm very happy with what I get from Spotify and Apple Music and Sirius and Sound Exchange. And I'm very lucky that, Lost Chapters 2 came out in December. So I've been able to, not worry about anything because I own those masters. And if you own your master, you can sell like a tenth of the amount of records and do well. I mean, I think I've sold maybe 5,000 physical, not even, maybe 4,000 physical on Lost Chapters 2, and I've done pretty well. And then with the streaming, I mean, that Jesse track, Jesse blessed me. Thank you, Jesse. Big shout out to Jesse. And then all the, the track with Howard on Lost Chapters 1, the these tracks are bringing in a lot of money, and it really helps me during this downtime. But having the podcast and owning my masters on those 2 records is just been very beneficial.
I'll bring you back to the podcast. I wanted to get a little bit of a take of where we are as a culture and as a scene in 2020, because we're coming off the first decade, whether we like it or not. And I know you and I both fall in the not category, that rock music has just had its first decade where it had no impact at all on pop culture. What we call rock music, hard rock, metal, punk, like alternative, all those things, emo, and all those sort of fucking TRL bands that went over the top, that high tide rises all ships. That didn't happen for the last decade. People say it's cyclical, but that's a long time to be out of cycle when you listen to what's going on in the mainstream and you see where we are as a culture. They ain't looking at us. How much does that hinder us as a scene? Because sometimes I understand the Mel is strong, Mel survives, fucking like, you know, metal never dies thing. But that's a long time to be out of cycle. And when we're out of cycle in the mainstream, no one's first favourite band are Napalm Death, right? We lose all of that exposure. Do you see that changing, and how much of a hindrance to us is it?
Well, I think there were some examples of it breaking through. I just think that it was in other genres. I think the influence now affects the other genres, and in those other genres, you're going to have breakout stars who, you know, are influenced one way or another by metal and by rock and by punk. I mean, if you look at someone even like, who would be an example? Like someone like a Machine Gun Kelly or Post Malone. I think that rock and metal informs what they do to a certain extent. So like Post Malone wearing a Crowbar shirt at his Louisiana show, or Machine Gun Kelly, you know, collaborating with someone like Travis Barker. I think in a way you will get some trickle down. You will get some attention. And also on the fashion front, you know, a lot of hip hop artists now have like metal style looking shirts and things like that. I mean, yeah, of course you always want it to be a breakout band like we've seen in the past, like a Slipknot or a System of a Down or Five Finger Death Punch or Lamb of God or whoever. You want that. But the way that content is fragmented so much. I mean, there's so many platforms for visuals and for video and for film and TV shows and music. It's so fragmented that, I mean, it's almost similar to how, like, you know, to go back to like the social media stars and things like that. It's almost similar in metal, where you'll have a band that's like the star of their subgenre. It might not reach into the other subgenres like it used to, because there was a place where, you know, I remember when there was radio stations where you would hear Stained and Aerosmith and Godsmack, but then you would hear Mudvayne and Hatebreed and Slipknot. It might be at 2 a.m, but so we just don't have that anymore. Now you have a playlist, or you have a Pandora channel or a Spotify playlist or an Apple playlist, and so there's those breakthroughs. But I just don't think we're all in the one place to kind of know. And you know, there's bands that they still have careers and they're still doing well. I mean, even during a pandemic, there's bands that have exposure and they have ways of reaching their audience, which is getting harder and harder to do. And those are the bands that if you are an up and coming artist, you know, you want to emulate those bands that do that stuff very well. The visuals, the social media, the website, the email list, just to be in control of it as much as you can be.
Like, what is your take about where we are as a culture as far as the mainstream is concerned? Because, like, I think I use this saying, like, privately mainly, but I'm sick of us splashing around in the kiddie pool and acting like it's all right, man. Like, there are so many great bands out there. It's not a quality issue, right? Like, it's not like, okay, I think, being frank, at the beginning of the last decade, when people were looking at me and I was going, why no rock music to people at Apple or whatever, they would say it's not exciting, and it would be hard to clap back at that point in time. But for the last half a decade at least, we've been shitting great bands, innovative stuff. And I hear so many bands that I'm like, if people just knew this existed, this band would be fucking colossal. What is your take about where we are as a scene? And you say we're fragmented, and I agree. How do we fucking galvanize and stop this shit?
It's just going to take the right opportunity, and since that opportunity can't be touring, right? It can't be the next Warped Tour or the next Ozfest. It's just going to take a different type of opportunity. I don't know what that is, but you know, I do a lot of things outside of music, and those are things that I don't publicize and I don't really talk about, just because there is sort of this. I don't even know how you would say it. But I guess it's almost like this new culture of, I don't want to say haters. I hate that term, but for whatever reason, like rock and metal, it has a lot of detractors, and maybe that's because we don't care about the gatekeepers anymore, and we don't need the gatekeepers anymore. Like, we can have our own careers and do very well without the access that these certain gatekeepers used to control, right? And there's benefit to that, but then there's also what you're talking about, which is like, okay, well, if this, you know, music supervisor for this movie studio doesn't like metal and thinks it's all noise, which I have heard, then, you know, this big film is gonna lean lighter with the soundtrack or with the score or what have you. Or there'll be instances of where some project will involve metal and it will be viewed as like a commercial failure, and somehow they'll tie that to metal. Or there'll be a controversy, and that's the only time that metal or hardcore punk rock gets into the mainstream zeitgeist, and it's because of something extremely negative, right? And in dealing with some of these businesses outside of music and hearing how people talk within these businesses, I'm always very grateful that I still have the music and the podcast, because I don't know how long I could live and be in fear of my job like a lot of these people that I deal with outside of music. And they're all great people, they're all nice people, but they're beholden to this new, I guess, I don't want to call it like haters, but it's like snitching. It's like a snitching culture of like, there's someone who's going to sit on a computer and they're going to dig through, you know, 40,000 tweets, or they're going to listen through all these old podcasts, and they're going to try to do this sort of smear campaign, right? Shout out to Napalm Death. And and so it's got a lot of people shook. It's got a lot of people like really scared, especially if you're working with someone or representing someone, or if that someone is your lifeline, or if that someone is your, for lack of a better term, meal ticket or employer or co-worker or something, right?
Yeah.
It's different than it was like back in the day, where the standards of speech and behavior, whatever, it's changed, and I don't even mind. I that's not something I'm mad at. Like, I have no, and I get a lot of flack for that. Like, I'll get people like saying that this is the end of free speech, and this is the end of people just being able to be who they are, and comedians being able to be comedians, and musicians being able to be musicians, and I'm like, well, no, not really. You can still do whatever you want, say whatever you want. You just need to make sure that you are your own boss, and that you have access to your fans and your content and your intellectual property, and that you own it. Because if you don't, and someone wants to just remove it from a service, or remove it from, and this came up on my show because, forget the name of the band, but they like removed, the name was too controversial, and it was something like Dying Fetus, but it wasn't that. And and so I always dealt with that being in a band called Hatebreed, But that it was widely known and widely understood that we were a band that unequivocally denounces racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, transphobia, whatever the ism is or the phobia is. We denounce that. We play all over the world. We play in Muslim countries. We've played in Israel. We want to bring people together. We want to unify people through our music and our message. We named it after a Misfits song. But now in 2020, someone will just look that up. They don't even look at it. They don't even go and look at the words. They don't do anything. And they just go, this is bad. I mean, we've had it on Instagram where the hashtag was blocked for like weeks because it had the word hate in it. We've had it where ads, we can't get ads like on Facebook or Instagram. Like, we want to advertise the new album, but it's coming up as some sort of hate thing. And it's not. It's just a word in the band name that we named after a Misfits song however many years ago. But when you're dealing with somebody in that corporate world and you saying like, hey, let's do this, or let's get our song here, or can we get sponsored by you guys, and they see that word and they go, they don't even do the research. They just go, oh no. And it's not because they don't want to. They're afraid of someone taking exception to it and going like, this is going to create an internet controversy where there is none. People looking for meaning where there is none. I don't know if you ever heard the episode that I did with Buzz from the Melvins.
No,
it didn't go so great. Like, I don't know if I got him on a bad day or if I was just.
They happen.
Yeah. But now I look back and I go, Buzz was right, because it was right after one of those movies came out where they were trying to say like Courtney Love killed Kurt or something.
Right.
And so when I brought it up, I could see his body language and just see the attitude towards me changed. And then I started thinking about it like, oh yeah, this is his reaction to people looking for meaning where there is none. People like he's associated with Nirvana forever. So he's like, I've done all this other stuff. I've had all these other accomplishments. I have hundreds of songs, amazing riffs. I've done all these tours, and this is what you want to talk about, right? And that's where we're kind of at right now. It's not just music. A lot of people are dealing with this. That's where we're at. It's like Hatebreed has done all this great charitable work. We're a Grammy nominated band. We sold 2 million albums. I hosted a TV show on Viacom. I've done voiceover. I've done 2 albums of music for ESPN. I was sponsored by Monster for like 10 years. I've worked with all these major companies, but now that is null and void if I'm not saying it is for me right now. I'm just using us as an example. But
could I ask you a question then? What was it like to be on the receiving end of that last year? Because the thing is, right, we're not like, oh, you're in town, call you up buddies, right? But we've been doing this for fucking ever. We've been doing these interviews, and I like to think that I know you, what you're about, what you stand for, and all of those things. So when fucking Church's Gate happened last year,
but this is the thing.
Were you disappointed though that these people that we all know you, so being painted out to be something that you're not? I thought, from my perspective, as someone that has a Hatebreed tattoo on the side of their head, I was offended on your behalf.
Yeah, well, look, the artists that supported me, that came to my defense, I appreciate, and the people in the industry like yourself who did, I appreciate. I still don't think there's anything wrong. I just did what any fan does anytime a lineup comes out. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. Right. But sometimes your opinion is going to do that. And I know that from doing a podcast with over 500 episodes. It's like, I see that words have power, but I also see that the words are taken out of context and they're taken to be something that they aren't. Right. So then when I see like articles being written about me that I'm sexist and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, these people are trying to get their, 10,000 clicks or 20,000 clicks. What is 20,000 clicks worth nowadays if you got a bunch of ads on there? Like $200-300?
Not even, mate. Hacks.
Okay.
You were done by hack jobs, man.
Okay. So yeah. So like a magazine like NME, who is, I don't even think they pay their writers. I think they have like interns I think anybody can write for NME, right? You just submit it. I could be wrong. Allegedly,
I think you're wrong on that, but like,
no, but
stand away from that landmine and.
Well, no, because they wrote stuff that just wasn't true, and then you look at who the writer is, and it's just like a kid who's, getting tickets to a show, and you think, well, this is not a real writer. This is not a journalist I respect. This is not a seasoned journalist. So like, I'm not mad. That's what it is. It's not a legitimate publication. So why would I be mad? And if it's not a legitimate writer or a writer I know personally, why would I be mad? I mean, the best advice I think the best advice I can give anybody in the public space, any artist in the public space, is that, if you don't know someone personally, don't take it personal.
Bullseye.
But that's why I'm gonna. The one thing that was kind of weird, it was good for me, but it was kind of also weird and sad, is that like I had a ton of streams and a ton of podcast listens, like a nice jump, and I sold a ton of records physical like during that time, and that's why I think that controversy and people who are sort of more mouthy in the press and online, they get addicted to that, right? Because they see the bump. But I don't want to be like one of those like moment type of podcasts or one of those like moment type of opportunists where, you just are constantly trying to chase that last controversy or that last edgy thing.
For real.
Because it's just exhausting. And anytime I say anything and someone takes an issue with it on social media, they don't realize that I don't see responses from people who aren't following me. So you have to follow me for me to see the response. So a lot of times people, if someone goes, dude, there's like, people are freaking out on Twitter, I'm not even seeing it because they don't follow me. And if you were to turn off that function and go, look, it's 100 people. That's nothing.
Yeah.
And really, it was only on Twitter that anybody cared about this stuff, and a couple of random blogs and a couple of random sites that I don't care about, that have no bearing on who I am as a person or what I do in my career. And I think it was Jim Florentine. I had him on not too long ago, and we were talking about similar situations and just how Twitter isn't really reality. It really does not have any bearing on reality. I mean, it's a small, I think, what percentage of the population is even on there?
Yeah.
Like we did math after the 25th anniversary tour. Like we had for the amount of like Facebook likes in the States that we have on our page, we actually sold like a serious amount of tickets where we're reaching those people. So if you look at the data in a lot of these things, like a tweet is not reaching, like I maybe have 100,000 people on my Twitter. A tweet is not reaching anybody, but the music, the shows, the lyrics, the songs, that's what reaches people. That's what affects people.
Amen. So I won't keep you for much longer, but I wanted to ask you about the podcast. And one of the main questions that I get from people as a broadcaster, it's not about ideas, it's not about presenting, it's not about any of that. It's about monetizing your ideas, right? If you've got a cool thing, how do you make it your job, monetize it? did you find that was a slow, like, how much were you helped by being Jamey from Hatebreed versus figuring out the hustle and finding ways to monetize this thing that you do?
I did have a couple big breaks, and they were just lucky. Like Nick Diaz, getting him.
Fuck. Yeah.
That was huge. And I was ignorant of how all that stuff worked, so I probably should have monetized it better, because there was clips from that episode that had 3 to 5 million views that
Fuck.
I didn't even know that people were putting it up on YouTube. I just totally missed the boat on YouTube. I remember going back on it. I would go on it here and there, and I remember it just being like a shit show of negativity, even on stuff like, now it's cool. Like, I love my YouTube. Like, my subscribers are awesome. I don't have a lot. I maybe have 10,000, but they're so awesome and so supportive. And, it's maybe 5% of my listeners are on YouTube, 2% or something. I don't know, but it's cool that it's growing, and now I'm looking at like all the archive stuff, and I'm thinking maybe I should be going back and divvying up these clips and trying to monetize it more, and animating clips and doing stuff. But I'm already doing so much stuff, and sometimes I really go like, at what point do you want to just have a break? Like, how much do we need? Like, do I need another? Like, what do I need? Like, I don't need anything. Like, do I need another car? Do I need another house? Do I need like, no, I need another cool riff to play, or a cool hook to sing. Like, I'd rather focus on that. So, monetizing stuff is cool. And I like, we always talk about ideas on the podcast, but at a certain point, you got to go, all right, when is enough? Like, let's try to focus on the stuff that's really making a difference.
Okay. And you've started your Patreon now as well. Because again, like, I look to you for this level of innovation that we get out of you, Jamey. Like,
I don't know if you're looking in the right place, but
where does that? Well, I'll talk to you when the cameras aren't rolling in a minute. But when you branch out into these new ventures and these new ideas, and people like, I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, man, but people do look to you for this shit. Like, you're one of the people that are out there. You hosted Headbangers Ball. You were on the podcast train early. Like it's one of those things. What does the Patreon bring to what I will, in a kind of Paris Hilton style way, refer to as the Jasta Empire, mate?
Well, I mean, you had shows behind a paywall before anybody.
100%. Yeah, man. Yeah.
I think all that's doing is just streamlining things so that we can track stuff better, because what had happened was people were donating on PayPal and Venmo like every month, and we would give them a shout out, and we send them a care package, or I would do like handwritten lyrics, or a wristband, or a signed bandana I wore on stage, or guitar picks, and then I literally ran out of stuff, and then I was talking to my buddy who helps me with this stuff, and he would be like, yo, you're backed up on all this stuff, and what are you going to send everybody? And some people are donating like $100 a month. Some guy just donated $400, and you go, oh shit, yeah. Like, I remember one guy, we sent a framed handwritten lyrics and a note and like a mug and all this different stuff, and then it gets to the point where you go, well, I don't want to have to keep creating physical. You're paying for shipping, you're going to the post office, or you're scheduling a pickup, or you do. So I was like, what could we use that time better? And in asking the diehard podcast listeners, they just wanted more content. And then after I did Lost Chapters 2, and I saw the potential there, not only just to collaborate and then let the fans in on the collaborations. Like right now on my Patreon, you can hear track I did with DL, who's a producer now, but used to be in the Acacia Strain. And this is a track that, if I had my shit together a little bit more before Lost Chapters 2, it probably could have ended up on Lost Chapters 2 and had a really cool guest vocal on it. But so now you'll hear that first before it makes the record. You'll hear that on Patreon. You'll get additional content. And I mean, content is king. I think that's
agreed.
You know, that's what we want to do. Not that I don't love making cool new physical products. And now that we have time that we're off the road, you're going to see a lot more of that stuff. But I just feel like scripted podcasts is where things are going. And I feel like, again, for those fans that they go above and beyond, you really want to give them a little extra value.
I agree, man. Like, this is it. Like, when you say like the like done stuff behind a paywall, the reason is like if my week, if the highlight of my fucking listening podcasting week is when Ice-T kicks in and does his intro and here comes the Jasta show, and it just ain't enough to get it once or twice a week, like, give me more. I'll pay for it. And that is, and as well as the physical stuff, like, you have so much going on. Like, it's not like you do this tiny amount. Your life is a 360 fucking crazy. Even getting your ears a nightmare.
Yeah. No, it is. And I've been trying to hone other skills too. Like this wall behind me, this shelf, all this stuff. Like, in the past, I would have just paid someone to come and do all that. Like, this is me watching YouTube videos going, all right, well, we're in a pandemic. The you know, Chi, rest in peace, Chi, just had a birthday. Chi ain't gonna hang himself. He was on a table leaning against a wall for a couple years. Shout out to Dean Carr. He took that picture, a great photographer. But so things like that, and learning how to, like, I believe it or not, I've learned how to code. not
HTML.
Not great. I'm learning how to. What else am I doing? I don't want to say too much just yet because I'm still learning, and I don't want to embarrass myself more than I already have. But let's just say there's an air conditioner over here that I put in, because when you buy a house and you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what to look for, you just listen to the home inspector. You listen to the realtor or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whole house has central AC, except where I am right here.
Always the way, man. Always the way.
So now I'm like, well, shit. If I'm going to be recording podcasts here, you said you couldn't hear it, right?
No, I can't hear it at all, man. Not at all.
Okay. So no
hum, no level hum, killing it.
Self-installation, cutting the hose, screwing the frame where the hose is going to go out, the exhaust out the window, all that stuff. I did all watching YouTube videos.
Jamey,
I moved a treadmill.
I demand a t-shirt of you dressed like Tim Allen in fucking Home Improvement with DIY till death written on it. I demand it.
You got to be careful. I think they canceled Tim Allen, right?
Did they? For fuck's sake. I can't keep up, mate. I can't keep up. So, last question then. Moving forward. Like, the podcast has become a real staple of our world, man. Like,
thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
The motivation to do my job, Jamey, is I just want to help. I want to help as many bands as I can. I want to get as many people on that are great and creating great shit into as many eyeballs and ear holes as I can. Is that, like, I know you did Headbangers Ball and the rest of it, but is that always the true will here? Like, you have your friends on and you get to, you know what I mean, bullshit with your mates for an hour and everyone's entertained by it. Sick. But what you're also doing is taking our culture to the masses. When I say about we need to be active in these extra platforms, like globally, the Jasta podcast stands for that to me.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I hope so. I hope it continues to. I think, lately it's been a little bit of a pickle party. I can admit to that. I need some more female energy in there, and I've been trying to schedule Jessica Pimentel, and she canceled for today, which actually worked out.
Jamey,
It worked out in your
cancelled
favor.
me. She cancelled for me as well today.
Yeah. No, I get it. She has auditions, and
Totally.
I totally get it. And but I love it. I guess the best feeling is, well, in music, the best feeling is when someone who doesn't like metal or hardcore music comes up to me and they go, or they're like, the other day I had this like famous athlete on Instagram. It's like, you would never think this guy likes metal or hardcore, and he's like, you guys are my favorite band, you saved my life, turned my entire life around just listening to Hatebreed every day, listen to the new Jasta, listen to the Kingdom of Sorrow, Ice Pick, all this stuff. And I was really blown away. You would never think that is the case, and that shows the power of music. But then I guess the podcast equivalent of that is like, I never liked this band, I never liked this guy or this girl. I always thought, blah, blah, blah. You know, the going back to the hater. I hate that term, but there are a lot of those people that you know, they see something in someone else that they don't like about themselves, and it brings out this weird energy, right? But I love when then they listen to them talk and they listen to their story and they go, holy shit, like it's similar to my story, or it's similar to something that I, you know, need to look to in order to do better for myself, or I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but it's like it's almost like they see beyond what their first impression was, and then they get to know the person, and then they hear us bouncing ideas back and forth, and they appreciate it. And if they were a little bit more than entertained, like I'm always shooting for entertainment, it should always just be entertainment. But then if it goes a little bit into that like motivational world or insightful, or sometimes occasionally someone will write me and they go, it was super funny and I really needed a laugh, like, you know, with Howard's episode this week. I got a lot of people like saying, you know, I really needed the laughs this week, thank you so much. So that means a lot to me. And then, you know, the last thing I'll say is just, it helps you from getting bitter, you know, and I think that the longer you're in this business, the more bitter you get, the more jaded you get. And as long as you're having conversations that are uplifting and meaningful, and as long as you're being able to write music or write lyrics that are going to have some sort of power for change or for inspiration, I think you're on a good path, you know. And that's, as much as people want to knock me, you know, anything, like I get people still going, you know, everything after Satisfaction sucks. Well, you weren't with me on and these are all our biggest songs, meanwhile, you know. So I just look at it as like, okay, well, that means that you were in the mindset that I was in when I wrote Satisfaction, which was negative headspace, and I saw the negative stuff that was happening on that tour. I saw the power in my words, I saw the power in the music, and I saw what it was doing and how everything was crumbling around us, and how there was all this negative stuff. Then when Perseverance came out, now I'm able to buy a house, I'm able to buy a car, my daughter has health insurance, we're touring worldwide with our favorite band Slayer, we're playing arenas with Slipknot, all this stuff. When the energy was turned to the positive, when we got with the right record label, got with a real manager, all this stuff started to change. And that's what I still try to tell people. Like, if you're in a bitter space, if you're in a bad spot, if you're in a bad way, and you can be famous, you could have money, and you could still be poor. You can be, you know what I mean? You can just be completely lost. And so that's why you need to connect with something that's inspiring, connect with something that gives you meaning, gives you purpose. Like, even now, I'll get people that are going, divinity of purpose. I get it now. I didn't get it back then. I hated on it. Well, yeah, now you get it. Like, because in a pandemic, you need a fucking purpose. Otherwise, shit gets real dark real quick. So, you know, the people will find it. It has a way. The people, they may not find it today, tomorrow, but when they do, I hope that it fuels them in some sort of way, because that's why I do it. I just do it so I got to tell myself something positive every night. That's the only reason. That's it.
Love it. So, new Hatebreed record is done. You're about to drop a single when this bullshit went on. I noticed when you were recording the record there was a real fiery enthusiasm from you, Jamey. Is there a badass Hatebreed record on the way?
Yeah. I got worried the other day and I had to go listen to it. I was like, wait, I forgot. I forgot about it. And I was like, oh shit, I better go listen to it. And then I don't know if you remember that interview Scott Ian did a while back, but he basically said, like, before there was Google and before there was the internet and stuff, he would just change his answers for every interview because he'd get bored during the press tours.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the point where, I try to respond to as many people as I can. So I'm getting bored of just saying, like, it's still TBA, we don't know. So now I've started to tell people, like, I had to go back and do extra bleh, and extra ooh, and extra yeah, and extra whatever noise I feel like saying I need to do extra. That's why I just go tell them. I said, that's why it's delayed. I had to go back and do like extra, like 5 extra bleh. That's it. And then they go, really? That's amazing. I can't wait. And then so now we're good.
Yeah, I just needed a little bit more stage dive in my monitors.
Yeah.
Jamey, I can't wait for the new Hatebreed record. When the single drops, come back and we'll talk about all things Hatebreed. But cheers for taking the time today, man. Always appreciate it.
Anytime, my brother. Wait till you hear it, man. This shit is hard.